Be here today with the President of the Queensland Council of Unions, John Badham. I'm particularly pleased that we're being joined by Pat Ogden. Pat is a local legend and someone who's very well known in this region, and I'll say a bit more about Pat in a moment, and also the Mayor of this area, Rob Chandler. Folks, first of all, I have a number of things to talk about today. Firstly, I'm pleased to have had the opportunity to sign the Queensland Council of Unions Charter of Workers' Rights here at the birthplace of not only the Australian Labor Party, but really the birthplace of fair and decent working conditions for Australians right across the country. Barcaldine is the birthplace of the Australian Labor Party. Barcaldine is the birthplace of the union movement in this country and everything that it has fought for to secure safe workplaces and fair and decent working conditions. The Queensland Council of Unions has submitted a workers' charter to every political party. I'm very pleased as the leader of the Labor Party to be signing on to this charter. What the charter commits our government to do in a new Labor government is to ensure that we protect the working conditions of people here working in workplaces right across Queensland. It also commits us to continue our investment in skills and in training at the workplace, and importantly commits us to maintain our existing safety nets around workplace health and safety and workers' compensation entitlements for workers. I understand that the Liberal and National Party have not signed on to this charter and that none of their candidates have been prepared to support it. I have to say, while I'm very happy to sign on to this charter, it really represents the basic minimum that I think Australians and Queenslanders would want to see from governments in relation to protecting working conditions of working people. More than a century ago, in this town, we saw workers come together and insist on decent, fair working conditions. We found ourselves a century later fighting workplace relations under John Howard that Australians rejected. It's little wonder that the union movement today continues to make sure that governments commit to looking after the working rights and safety provisions of working people. The Labor Party was born here. The traditions and the values that drove those men and women so many years ago to insist on decent working conditions and a decent share of the bounty of the economy for every working person are the same values that drive me as Premier and the values that drive our government. So this charter is an important part of our relationship with the Labor movement. With this signature today, I give my commitment that our government will continue to look after working people, will protect the safety net, will keep their workplaces safe, and will ensure that their entitlements to workers' compensation and other award conditions are safe under a new Labor government. I'll talk about the other announcement, and then I think both John and Pat and Rob are happy to say something. When you come into towns like Barcaldine here in Western Queensland, you really see a great part of our history and our heritage, and you also see just how many people want to come and visit. These are the sort of towns that we see grey nomads from all over the country coming to visit and having a terrific time. There are about 50,000 visitors here to Barcaldine each and every year, and they spend around $7 million in the local economy. That's why I'm very pleased to announce today that a new Labor government will invest $4.5 million in the next upgrade of the Australian Workers' Heritage Centre here. The Australian Workers' Heritage Centre is a museum that pays tribute to the working men and women that built this state and built this country. These are very important parts of our history, and we want to make sure they're preserved and that Australians will flock, as they have been, to this part of Australia to see that history. The next stage of the master plan for this museum includes a number of very significant upgrades, but it includes here in this part of the facility it includes an upgrade to this facility here. This recognises the contribution that the men and women of our emergency services have made to our state over 150 years. And it has to be upgraded to include the most recent big disasters, Cyclone Larry, the floods of 2010 and 2011, and of course Cyclone Yasi. So the $4.5 million will be for a very significant renovation of a number of parts of this museum, but it will also extend some of the displays, notably this one here, that pays tribute to our emergency service workers and the role they've played in our history. So I'm very pleased to be able to make that announcement. That's part of a $16.5 million commitment to regional tourism. I announced last week that a new Labor government would allocate $300 million of royalties into regional initiatives that were about livability and sustainable communities. $16.5 million of that $300 million will go to this regional tourism initiative. 14.5 to the Australian Workers Heritage Centre. The remaining 12 will be available for grants for drive tourism. We tried a very small program of this in the last couple of years. It's been very successful. The grants will be available to local governments and to regional tourism organisations for all sorts of things, mostly the drive side infrastructure that makes touring through these parts of Queensland a great experience. Things like rest stops with good toilets and picnic facilities. All those people who travel from around Australia to come here, we need to keep them safe and make sure that driving around this part of Queensland can be a great experience for them. So with those few words, I'm very, very pleased to be in here in Barcaldine. This really is a terrific part of Queensland, and it's one of the great Australian places to visit. So I encourage anyone who hasn't been here to get out to Barkie and have a look at everything this town has to offer.